My name is Amelia Hart, and I'm 29 years old. If you asked most people, they'd probably describe me as dependable, the kind of person who shows up even when no one else does. I used to wear that like a badge of honor. Now, looking back, I realize sometimes dependable is just another word for easy to take for granted. I met Ethan at a rooftop birthday party a friend dragged me to. I almost didn't go. I had work the next day, and honestly, I've never been good at small talk. But sometimes fate plays its cruel tricks at the exact moment you think you're safe from them. The night was warm, the city buzzing below us. I remember holding a flimsy paper plate with a half burnt slider on it, trying to look less awkward than I felt. And then he appeared leaning casually against the railing, his grin quick and unbothered, the kind that made people want to orbit closer. He tilted his head at me. You the chef or just socially awkward like me? I almost choked on my drink. My laugh came out sharper than intended, but I answered it both. He laughed a real laugh, warm and unrestrained. It was the kind of sound that cracked something open in me. We ended up talking for hours, drifting from the food table to the corner couch, swapping sarcastic comments and half-serious confessions. When the party started thinning out, I didn't want the night to end. And judging by the way he lingered, neither did he. That was the beginning. Within weeks, we were inseparable, or so I thought. Late night drives take out on my couch bookstore wanderings just because he liked the smell of paper. With Ethan, even mundane things felt magnetic, like gravity pulling me toward him, whether I wanted it or not. But here's the thing about gravity, it doesn't care if it crushes you. The closer I got to Ethan, the more I realized I was the only one moving forward. When I opened up about my childhood, my career goals, even my fears, he'd smile faintly, then switch the subject. If I texted I miss you, sweetie, he'd reply with Pipkai tweety, that's sweet, followed by hours of silence. Oh, it wasn't cruelty, not exactly. It was indifference, and somehow that stung worse. I told myself he was guarded, that maybe I just had to earn his trust. But deep down, I felt it. That chill that seeps in when you're pouring yourself out to someone who only holds out an empty cup. One night after a long drive where I'd been rambling about my plans to maybe start my own business someday, he glanced at me and said casually, You worry too much. Don't get too attached. I laughed it off. Attached to what? I teased, nudging him. He smirked to me. He said it like a joke. I treated it like one, but something in his eyes, that fleeting flicker, like he was already warning me, should have made me pause. I didn't, because when you're falling, you don't notice how close the ground is until you hit it. Ethan lost his job about 3 months into our relationship. He brushed it off as office politics, some drama with his manager. But the truth was, he didn't want to talk about it. I did what I always do, tried to help. Send me your resume. I'll polish it up, I said one night while we ate takeout in his apartment. He waved me off. I don't need charity, Amelia. I just need some space. So I gave him space and quietly picked up the slack. I covered most of our dinners. When he hinted about being late on rent, I wired him $600 without him asking directly. His only reply was a short text. Got it. No thank you, no emoji, nothing. I told myself gratitude wasn't important, that supporting someone you care about means doing things without expecting acknowledgement. But deep down a voice whispered, You're being used. I ignored it. When Ethan got sick a few weeks later, nothing serious, just the kind of flu that left him whining in bed, I canned my own birthday dinner with friends to take care of him. I made soup, picked up his prescriptions, even cleaned his kitchen, while he drifted in and out of sleep. You're so sweet, he mumbled once before rolling over and passing out again. The next week, when I tried to reschedule my birthday dinner, he forgot it was even happening. Oh, that was tonight, he texted. Sorry, got plans already. I remember staring at my phone screen, my cake half melted in its box, and wondering why it hurt more that he forgot than if he had just said no. My friends started noticing. At brunch one Sunday, my closest friend leaned across the table and whispered, Amelia, he doesn't look at you the way you look at him. I mean it, be careful. I smiled and waved her concern away. You don't know him like I do. He's just different. But that night, lying in bed alone, I replayed those words. He doesn't look at you the way you look at him. It was true. Ethan had this calm, distant energy that drew people in, but it never gave them a place to land. And there I was, building a whole home in my heart for someone who didn't even knock at the door. The foreshadowing signs kept piling up. Little red flags I stuffed into drawers until they threatened to spill out, like the night I tried to open up about how much I cared for him. I think about us a lot, I admitted softly, sitting beside him on the couch. I see a future here. He didn't even look up from his phone. You get too emotionally invested sometimes. I laughed nervously. Isn't that the point of being in a relationship? He finally glanced at me, smirking. Maybe for you. Don't get too attached, Amelia. The words hit harder the second time he said them. I tried to cover my unease with a smile, but my chest tightened. It was like he was planting seeds of doubt in soil I was desperately trying to keep fertile. Still, I stayed because when you love someone like Ethan, you convince yourself that scraps are meals. That the small moments, a laugh in the car, his hand brushing yours in the dark, are proof enough that love exists. You ignore the silence. You excuse the forgetfulness. You accept the imbalance. And you tell yourself, it'll all be worth it when he finally realizes how much I love him. I didn't know then that the realization I was waiting for would never come. Not from him, anyway. I've always believed love was about gestures. Not the flashy kind you post on Instagram, but the quiet ones. Remembering someone's favorite snack, leaving notes in their bag, planning something thoughtful just to see them smile. So when Ethan mentioned once, almost in passing, that the ocean made him feel peaceful, I held on to it. I thought, this is it. This is how I can finally show him he matters. I spent 3 months saving cutting corners on groceries and skipping nights out. By the time his birthday was close, I had enough to book us a weekend at a luxury beachside resort, the kind of place I'd only ever admired in magazines. I even bought him a bracelet, silver and simple, engraved with words he once told me in a rare moment of vulnerability. With you, I feel safe. That sentence had echoed in my mind ever since. I thought giving it back to him etched in metal would remind him of the truth I believed was buried beneath his indifference. The morning of the trip, I showed up at his apartment with coffee the way he liked it. Oat milk and 2 sugars. Surprised, I grinned. Pack a bag, we're going away for the weekend. He blinked at me, coffee halfway to his lips. Seriously? Like right now, I laughed nervously, brushing my hair behind my ear. Yeah, it's all planned. Just grab some clothes. I'll drive. He gave a half smile, but it wasn't the kind I hoped for. Okay, that's cute. Cute. Not amazing, not thoughtful, just cute. Still, I ignored the sting. I told myself once we got there. Once he saw the ocean, once he opened the bracelet, everything would shift. The drive was quiet. Ethan scrolled on his phone, chuckling at group chats, while I stole glances at him, searching for any sign of excitement. You okay? I asked softly. Yeah, just tired, he muttered, eyes glued to the screen. I nodded, but a pit was forming in my stomach. When we arrived, the resort was breathtaking. Ocean views, a balcony with fairy lights, the rhythmic crash of waves just far enough to soothe you. It was everything I imagined he'd love. But Ethan barely looked around. He tossed his bag on the bed and asked, "What's the Wi-Fi password?" That night I booked us a table at the resort's best restaurant. I put on a dress I hadn't worn in years, navy silk soft against my skin. He wore a crisp shirt, and for a moment when he walked toward me, I thought maybe tonight will be different. Wiki? The restaurant was draped in golden light, the ocean breeze weaving through as candles flickered between us. My heart pounded as I slid the small gift box across the table. He opened it, read the engraving, and said flatly, "Wow, you remembered that." "Of course," I whispered, smiling weakly. It meant something to me. He slipped the bracelet back into the box without wearing it. My throat tightened. "Is something wrong?" Ethan swirled the wine in his glass, his face unreadable. "You really want to do this here?" "Maybe it's the perfect place," I said, my voice was trembling. "I just need to know where you are in this, in us." He leaned back, bored, like I was discussing weather forecasts. "I like you, Amelia. I enjoy being with you," but he shrugged. "You're way too emotionally invested. You're 10 steps ahead, imagining forever. I don't move like that." I swallowed hard. "I'm not asking you to marry me tomorrow. I just want to know if we're growing in the same direction. Because sometimes it feels like I'm the only one trying." His lips curled into a pitying smile, the kind you'd give a child who doesn't understand the rules of the game. Then he said it. Don't get too attached. I don't see this lasting. The words sliced through me clean and merciless. For a moment the world blurred. The sound of waves, the clinking of glasses, the flicker of candles all muffled under the weight of his indifference. I thought I'd cry or beg or argue, but instead I just sat there hollow. He sipped his wine like he'd just discussed the specials with the waiter. I realized then I had built a castle on sand, and the tide had finally come. That night after dinner, Ethan slipped off his shoes, flopped onto the hotel bed, and started scrolling through his phone as if nothing had happened. The words, "Don't get too attached," okay, still echoed in my chest like broken glass rattling inside a jar. I sat on the edge of the balcony watching the waves crash against the shore. They sounded steady, eternal. My love for him had been anything but. For the first time in months, I stopped asking myself what was wrong with me. I asked what was wrong with him. That shift, small as it was, felt seismic. I packed quietly while he laughed at something on TikTok. Socks, charger, toothbrush folded neatly into my duffel. Every item tucked away was a piece of myself I was reclaiming. Before I left, I placed the bracelet on the nightstand right next to his buzzing phone. The silver glinted under the soft lamplight, the engraving staring back at me, "With you. I feel safe." How ironic. I didn't feel safe with him at all. I felt invisible. At 6:00 a.m., the first streaks of gold painted the horizon. I slipped out of the room. Ethan didn't stir. He wouldn't notice until hours later that the gravity he took for granted had finally let him go. The front desk clerk looked surprised when I checked out early. "Was everything not to your liking, Ms. Hart?" I smiled faintly. Everything was perfect. I candled the rest of the reservation, making sure the remaining charges were under Ethan's name. The spa treatments, mini bar snacks, even the late checkout fee he had requested without asking me. All of it his responsibility now. By 10:30, my phone lit up in the passenger seat. "Where are you?" "Did you go somewhere 5 minutes later? You're not serious right now." I didn't reply. The road stretched out in front of me, quiet and endless. The hum of the engine soothing in a way Ethan never was. The calls kept coming 5 times. 10:20. Then the text turned frantic. "Why are you acting like a child? You could have just said something. I don't have money on me. Are you actually leaving me here?" I muted his number and kept driving. It wasn't cruel. It was clarity. Ethan wasn't stranded in the desert. He was in a luxury resort with staff, a buffet, and a concierge. He'd be fine or he wouldn't. Either way, it was no longer my problem. Later, I learned what happened. He hadn't brought a credit card, only a debit card with a pathetic balance. He assumed, as always, that I'd cover everything. When the front desk presented him with charges, he panicked. He begged them to let him leave without paying. But policies are policies. They held his license until someone wired the money. That someone wasn't me. For once, Ethan had to face consequences without me cushioning the fall. Meanwhile, I was back home standing in my kitchen with sunlight streaming through the window, breathing more deeply than I had in months. I didn't text. I didn't explain. My silence was the loudest truth I'd ever spoken, and I realized he had no idea how to fight against silence. Ethan didn't disappear. Men like him never do. They thrive on being chased, and when the chasing stops, they panic. At first it was calls and texts. "Why are you doing this? You could have just told me how you felt instead of ghosting me." Then it was guilt tripping. "After everything I've been through, you really think this is fair?" Finally it became desperate. "Please just help me this once." Every message I ignored felt like a stitch closing an old wound. When the text failed, he tried going through my sister. One night she called, confused. "Ethan messaged me. He sent me a picture of you two from months ago and asked me to talk to you." "Do you want me to?" I didn't hesitate. "No," because I was done explaining myself to someone who had never listened. For the first time in years, my life felt light. I spent weekends with friends again, laughing without glancing at my phone. I picked up hobbies I'd abandoned, painting, hiking, baking at midnight just because I felt like it. And then there was Liam. We met at a friend's game night. He wasn't dazzling like Ethan, not the kind of man who sucked the air out of a room. He was steady, kind. He asked questions and actually listened to the answers. He laughed with his whole body, not just a smirk. The first time he cooked for me lasagna with slightly burnt edges, I realized I didn't have to beg for crumbs anymore. I could be full. By the time August rolled around, I was smiling more than I had in years, which is why it stung just a little when Ethan appeared again. It was at a crowded birthday dinner, long tables filled with chatter and clinking glasses. Liam sat beside me, his hand resting casually on my knee. Across the room, Ethan froze when he saw us. For a moment, his face crumpled disbelief, bitterness, then that practiced mask of indifference. But mask slip his eyes gave him away. Later, while Liam stepped out to take a call, Ethan approached me at the bar. "Can we talk for a second?" His voice was low, almost pleading. I nodded, not out of hope, just curiosity. We stepped outside onto the patio. The night air was cool, the city humming around us. "I've been trying to reach you," he started. His shoulders slumped, a far cry from the careless confidence he once wore. "I messed up, Amelia. I thought I wanted freedom, but all I did was isolate myself from the only real thing I had. You were solid safe. That should have meant something." He looked at me with eyes that finally seemed to understand what he'd lost. "I get it now," he whispered. "I really do. I miss you." For a moment, silence stretched between us. In another life, I might have cracked, might have let his words reel me back in, but not this time. I took a slow breath and met his gaze. "You told me not to get too attached," I said softly. He blinked. "So I didn't." The shock on his face was almost pitiful. He opened his mouth, searching for something to say, but I cut him off gently. "You were right, Ethan. It didn't last, and that's not my loss. It's yours." I turned and walked back inside. Liam was at the table laughing with my friends like he'd known them forever. When he saw me, he smiled. Not performative, not desperate, just warm. I felt myself exhale a weight I hadn't realized I was still carrying, finally slipping off my shoulders. Ethan stayed outside alone, scrolling his phone like a man clinging to a life raft made of smoke. For months, I replayed that night at the resort in my head, torturing myself with what I could have done differently. Now I don't anymore because he was right about one thing. It didn't last, and thank God it didn't.